With me tonight we have Mr. Robert Craig, who's a wonderful blues guitarist, made famous a three-tone Sunburst Stratocaster, which he plays, which looks a lot like this one, but in reality it's nothing like this one. And I'm making this video in response to another video I made where I called these SX guitars junk. So I want to kind of justify that a little bit here. But I'm not just going to hate on these. I'll go over the good, the bad, and the ugly really quick. So this I bought for 80 bucks on eBay. It's a three-piece American alder body. You could probably even see the centerpiece right there and where they were glued together. You could also see it a little bit on the back. And it has a Canadian maple neck and a rosewood fretboard. And fortunately, because of modern machining these days and the preciseness with which we could make things like metals and wood, and with which craftsmen can now just plug it into a computer and have these things carved automatically, we get a very nice body and neck. And that's the good thing about this guitar. For 80 bucks, I don't know where you could get any type of used guitar neck. Even the shittiest Squires go for a little bit more than that used. So it is a cheap wood. It's good quality wood. It's not some random piece of shit wood that you would find compressed sawdust or anything like that. There's no sharp frets on this at all, which surprises me. It could be the previous owner worked on it, for all I know, and sending them down, but as far as I know, it came from the factory like this. It's pretty nice. It's a 25.5 inch scale, which is on par with what you get out of a Fender instrument. And like I said, due to modern machining, you get a guitar that feels like almost exactly the same weight as a Fender Strat made out of the same wood. And it's very similar. The headstock even looks similar in this one, although they changed that a few years later because of some complaints made by Fender. And so that goes for the good of this guitar. For 80 bucks, I mean, it looks good and the neck feels pretty good, but where they go wrong is putting together the actual instrument, and that's where the assembly line mentality really shows in this guitar, and the lack of quality control shows. And that's why I call them pieces of junk, because they're not put together well. I mean, yeah, you know, it's a nice body and a nice neck for the price, and for 100 bucks brand new, I don't think you could do much worse. You know, I mean, it's pretty much all crap at that price, but it really can't get much worse. First and foremost, almost everybody who buys any of these guitars says you gotta switch the nut. It's like the cheapest plastic material you'll ever find. It's not even some type of synthetic bone or anything like that. It's just cheap plastic, and it needs to be replaced. Another problem that I have is, like my other YouTube video, for those of you that want to see, this bridge is not put on the right place, and this high E string is really far up. This low E string is almost off the fretboard completely. So there's nothing you can do about that unless you're gonna take this out. You're gonna put some filler in and realign this bridge. You could see that all my saddles pull right on this bridge, and that's because it's placed so far away from where it should be, depending which side you're looking at. If I'm looking at it straight like this, and it would be they're pulling to the right, you know, because it's placed too far left, and that's a problem. That's a big problem with these type of guitars, because you could say that you want to Frankenstein them, and that you want to hot rod them, and you want to you're going to swap everything out, but when the bridge is placed in the wrong place, you're going to have to do a lot of work to switch that out. I mean, time is money also, so the amount of hours you put into work for this, how much would you be getting at your regular job for doing that kind of work, and what kind of instrument would you be able to buy if you would just go and work and get the money, instead of spending all the time trying to fix something that's broken to begin with, instead of getting something that actually works right off the bat. So the saddles pull right, this bridge is not aligned properly. There's not much you can do about that. There's nothing really you can do about that. These string trees are terrible. They put bad pressure points, and on the strings in the wrong places and makes the guitar go out of tune pretty easily. This one doesn't go out of tune too much. It does go out of tune, doesn't stay in tune. So I put it that way. It doesn't stay in tune too well, but it doesn't. It's not the worst that I've seen. I've seen worse, and I've seen more expensive guitars that go out of tune quicker than this though. And I don't have a heavy picking style or anything like that. So one of the main problems on these guitars is quality control. And how they let a guitar like this out the factory. I mean, nobody checks it and says, oh, you know what, wow, this really shouldn't be sold. This thing, you can see it if you want. I'm going to put this real close so you could see. I mean, you try to play up here and let me know. You know, this thing just goes right off. You can barely push it down without it going off. And this is just so far up. It's like you could almost fit another string down here. So it's not put into place properly. Another thing that needed to be replaced, which the previous owner replaced, these come usually they came with the black knobs too, and the top hat for the selector switch, and those had to be replaced too because they were total crap, and they just broke, they break off, they fall off. So these are some replacement parts that the previous owner put up that he told me about. He also switched out this bridge pickup because he said it sounded like complete shit and something he couldn't even work with, like just for jamming, even in practicing. It sounded too terrible, and he needed something a little better. So he put this Washburn, off a Washburn type of Strat that he had. He just took it out and put it in here, and that's why I bought it for $80 because he has some of those upgrades like the the bone nut and whatnot. But ultimately, I mean, who's gonna buy this guitar and spend hours and hours and hours of work on it? Why? I would, just the way I think, I would rather, you know, be working and getting money and buying a higher quality instrument that at least has some resale value, or at least doesn't require that much more work. Like this doesn't have any reinforcement as far as wood goes. Maple is not strong wood. I have maple here on my on my whatever these are, cabinets that I have on the wall, and they bend if you put weight on them. So just imagine what happens to this type of neck. It's not reinforced or anything like that. So you might, like, for $300-400 you could get a Japanese Strat, you could get a Mexican Strat, you could find those Korean Strats like the one I had. I just saw one go $400 on eBay. So those who are responding and saying that that, you know, they don't have the money to buy a real instrument, well, then how do you have the money to sit there and spend your time working on it and swap out the pickups and swap out the plastic nut and swap out all this stuff? I mean, you could just say that you like working on guitars and that's why you like the challenge of turning one of these things into a guitar that's playable. But just the way they ship and the way it is, and this one has been set up by the guy who owned it, who owns tons of guitars. I own a whole bunch of guitars and set up my own guitars for a decade now, and the same thing, you know. I see the same problems with it that he is. He was at least honest with me about it, which is why I bought it for $80. It's not one of those people that gets up and says, "Whoa, oh, you guys are a bunch of morons for buying a Fender Strat. You can buy an SX guitar." That's a bunch of bullshit, and anyone that's gonna preach that knows that it's a bunch of bullshit. And maybe you're broke or something like that, and I'm glad that people can admit that to themselves and say, well, hey, I'm looking for a cheap guitar. But you can't use the excuse that you're getting a whole lot of bang for your buck, because you get what you pay for ultimately. That goes with Xavier guitars, those Agile guitars that are on Rondo, SX guitars, all different types of guitars. Given some of them will overcharge you and give you a piece of shit, like some Fender guitars, and especially Gibson guitars, which the quality control is just terrible on. That being said, that's the good and bad about this guitar, and whether you like me or not, leave a comment and let me know what you think about yours. I know some of you are going to bash me, and I think that's a good thing, because you can't please all of the people all the time. You can only please some of the people some of the time. Subscribe to my channel because more is coming.